Right. Hello, everyone. Welcome once again to another episode of Investing with a Difference. And we are continuing our BP Focus series with EOS Detroit today. And if you already know them, I think they're very visible. The way they have contributing to the communities before the mainnet launch. This is the team. I'm sure you must have heard the names if you're in Telegram or if you're watching a lot of the video calls they are doing. So when I say video call, I think they are, if you go to their YouTube channel, they are the only source for most of the live content which is happening in EOS world, whether it is starting from sharing all the alliance meetings, even before that when there was a mainnet calls. I think this was my source for some of times when I was not able to track what's going on and the BP calls. And so they have been streaming a lot of live content. And of course, as I always keep looking for their initiatives for the community, so they have now started putting a calendar on their website. So I was just talking to Rob, and he's highlighting that this is a single resource, which I think you can all go and see what are the events happening. So do go to their website, and you can click on this community calendar on the top, and you should see all these details. Beyond all the efforts they're doing on EOS mainnet, so I think many of you already know that they are one of the founding VPs on Tilos, and this is the side chain or sister chain as we call it, which is starting with a different governance plan. I think we talked about it in our channel earlier, and we will definitely discuss more about it as we go along in this particular focus episode. And I think other thing is, of course, they have also announced they will be part of the Worbli chain. And other initiatives which we are seeing is EOS Detroit is actually started a Boyd project. I think if you can join them, if you are interested in earning Boyd tokens. So this is, they are continuously taking part in various ecosystem projects with EOS. So without further delay, let's bring Rob into the call. And welcome, Rob. How are you doing?
Thanks, Raman. I'm doing great today and appreciate that comprehensive overview of what we've been up to. Appreciate being invited onto the Investing with a Difference channel. You have been doing a service to the community, keeping tabs on everything happening week to week and doing informed voting. And for that, we're very appreciative. So yeah, thanks for the welcome. Good to be here.
I'm glad to have you because I think you have been contributing quite a lot in terms of sharing information and keeping the community informed when the community was very small. So I really appreciate your time. And how do you feel right now? Like, what do you think is after this 3 months of ES mainnet? What are your views on how things are progressing? And what are you feeling like satisfied with the progress, because you have been one of the early stage block producers who started contributing and starting getting involved with EOS much earlier than many others?
Yeah, good question. So it's really quite amazing to see how fast EOS has grown just after 3 months. We've seen blockchain performance records busted. EOS now holds the highest transactions per second for a blockchain, also the most transactions done over a 24-hour period. So that's amazing. I believe we've seen somewhere between a doubling and a tripling of the number of accounts on EOS since Genesis,
yes,
which is really big. I think it took Steam at least a year to get that many accounts, and EOS, it took a quarter of the time. So it's really amazing to see the ecosystem growth, to continue to see new airdrops and new decentralized applications come out of the woodwork, to see real usable decentralized applications already today that people can use via scatter or via the terminal if they're a little bit more sophisticated. So it's really been quite breathtaking to see the size and scale and magnitude of EOS post-launch. And I believe we're just picking up momentum. Things have baked. We've been iterating on the protocol, working towards a more stable protocol. It's takes time to get software right. And so it's good that we have had 3 months past And, a lot of things have been fixed in that 3 months. A lot of exploits have been found and patched. So we're getting stronger. The EOS network is bolstering itself and getting ready for real mainstream adoption, I think.
No, that's great. I think it's very satisfying, I think, for many people. But I think, as you said, the ecosystem is growing. A lot more people are coming in. That's another aspect of what has happened in 3 months. And especially number of accounts. Yes, I think we hope that that brings more and more adoption. So let's come back to the whole block producer part of it. So we always discuss, I think, the kind of work you have done. And still, I think because of certain reasons, I think, which we are still trying to figure out how this voting process works. Somehow you guys didn't manage to be in the top block producers. So how do you keep things going? I think definitely you are contributing a lot. So what is your next steps as a block producers when you're looking at contributing to EOS mainnet?
Good question. So we really want to, pick up our shovels and start doing more building. But the nature of a startup can be very chaotic. So our company started in March, and we've gotten together a good team since then, and we've got a lot of people on our team contributing, earning equity in our slicing pie dynamic equity model I kind of alluded to earlier. But given the fact that no one on the team is independently wealthy, we have been working to raise fund from local angels and investors that are interested in our industry and what we're doing. So we've been, working on a raise in parallel to continuing to build value. As far as the operations go, I've been covering most of that myself. And beyond that, we're a very scrappy team. We want to see the vision of what EOS can be realized, especially here locally. We want to see the transformative power of that deployed and actually creating value for people. So a lot of our work comes from a place of passion. Beyond that, our plan, so we've been working on, scoping out how to deploy a DAC locally, actually, for a few months now. And we're working on publishing a couple papers around that. But, it's like there's a lot of irons in the fire, and we're doing a lot in many parallel directions. So we're at a saturation point, really, where we just want to nail the things we've committed to. And so, we've got a lot of, launching a local DAC and airdropping to people in our city. So trying to figure out, how do you actually onboard the masses? How do you actually get people interested in this stuff that may not have a technical background or have found cryptocurrency yet? How do you make it cool? How do you make it sleek? How do you make it usable or valuable to these people? We've really got our minds there. And that's, kind of segs into our community engagement on the local level. So we live stream all of the events we have, but really what we're trying to do is create a conversation and inform people who may not know about EOS or know about blockchain and what, all of these different things that are coming down the pipeline and different ways we can sort of reconfigure our society or, upgrade our socioeconomic system. Like, we really want to inspire people and, get them thinking about these new ideas so they'll be a little more receptive to it once we actually have the mature applications that we can bring to market. Sure. And I think EOS is, well along the way on that path. So it's really a matter of time, and we're working on priming the pump here.
No, makes sense. I think we really see so much of passion in this EOS community, and especially in your team and the way you guys are progressing, even after not being able to make it on the top block producers. And from that, I would like to take into this the other aspect of it, that you have been a significant contributor in the sister chains. For example, the Telos or Telos, I don't know how you guys pronounce it, but it's still an unknown quantity. Like a lot of people are still trying to figure out, while I think we had a few conversations. In fact, the first time I heard about this sister chain was when we were talking on the phone about some other areas. And you told me, oh, there is something going to be launching. So, now I remember, like, these things are, when we discussed, it was very exciting because it only enhances the EOS IO ecosystem, not just EOS mainnet, but overall EOS IO main ecosystem. So how do you see today? Like, do you see a lot of engagement coming in for these new projects? And also maybe you can talk about Worbli, because now I hear that you are going to be one of the block producers for this new sister chain, which is a lot of people are excited about.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for bringing that up. It's really important to understand that these sister chains are, the mainnet is the control, and the sister chains are the experimental groups. And through sister chains, we can try more radical experiments that we don't necessarily want to try on the mainnet because there's a lot of value at stake. We need to be more cautious there. So that's how I've always viewed these side, or these alternate EOSIO variants is, we're testing new conditions. So in Tilos, there's the big change in distribution to actually cap the amount of stake that each account gets. That's a contentious change. That's something you obviously couldn't do on the mainnet. It's something that warrants trying, simply because it'll give us insight into voting dynamics. It'll give us insight into, essentially the voting dynamics are the big part there, but it's also going to be interesting to see how the market prices something like Telos. And beyond that, I mean, there's protocol development happening on Telos that's different from what we have on the mainnet. So inverse voting dynamics, or the inverse voting mechanism rather, says that the more BPs you're voting for, the more powerful your vote is. So you actually don't get 100% vote if you only vote for a few BPs. It's actually limited down much lower. And then the more BPs you vote for, the higher your voting power is. So it incentivizes voting for more BPs, which is, as Dan Larimer put it, if you're not voting for, I think, at least 15 BPs, then you're contributing to a Byzantine failure, like a Byzantine failure. So, everyone should be at least doing their due diligence to vote for a higher number of BPs. Telos sort of decided to address that at the protocol layer with a software mechanism. That's something that the mainnet could say, hey, that's a really nice feature. We want that, and borrow it from Telos. So for those reasons, we think it's really valuable to support sister chains. And with Worbli, they're leaning more towards being totally compliant and friendly to regulations, and having KYC embedded at a protocol layer. And this is also interesting because it essentially becomes the Ripple of EOSIO. That's how I view it. And it's like, well, some businesses aren't going to have the risk tolerance to go straight to the jugular and be on the EOS mainnet. So for some of those more conservative businesses, if we can offer them a chain that works for their needs but still gives them the benefits of the technology, that's a win-win. And especially with both of these chains, every EOS Genesis, well, for Telos, it's the EOS Genesis holders. For Worbli, it's anyone who had EOS on September 7th. So, they have different snapshots, but the idea is it's okay. We don't need to be so worried about forks because we all get bought into all of the forks as long as you're just holding EOS. And then, you can watch all the experiments play out. And if you decide you want to trade on like where they're going, you can. But, we're all sort of along for the ride on all these things. And it also allows teams that aren't being incentivized to continue another place to have a chance to find revenue that can sustain their company. So for us, it was a no-brainer strategic decision. Like, we want to keep doing what we love, and we're really passionate about it. So if the EOS voters don't hire us, then we'll go find opportunities. And really, the opportunities came to us, and we said yes. So it's really a matter of, there's some business strategy there for us, and I can totally understand why a BP that is higher up in the vote may not decide to be a public supporter of something like Telos. Totally makes sense. It's a matter of game theory at that point. So why deny it? But beyond that, like, I don't think we need to pick and choose allegiances within the EOSIO ecosystem, because a lot of the things that we can create value by doing can benefit all of the chains that we're supporting. So that's really our, or at least my personal, our team generally agrees with me. There's definitely different, opinions within the team, which I think is healthy. But in general, that's our approach and our philosophy on it. And, we think that it's going to be all good for everyone involved.
No, I agree. So I think there's something which we covered when this announcement happened. I think there are a lot of strange reaction from people, and I was giving the same argument to people on, if you remember the video which we did. It is more about either we can lose all the people who are so involved, and especially like team like yours, which has we have seen you contribute even before mainnet launch, and a lot of other good resources we have in the block producers who are not right now getting any rewards from the EOS mainnet. And you need to keep the candle burning, and so you need to have the stuff going. So it's very good actually, because now you are again giving back by doing the same software is being used with a different governance or in a different model like Worbli, and you keep investing into EOS, and I think that's a win-win situation. Now let me get back, and I think a lot of people give you an argument about these experiments you talked about on Telos. And so how do you justify, let's say you talked about the pricing of Telos. So there's a different kind of rewards for, for example, let's say hypothetically that there is a bad element in mainnet, and you're trying to avoid that bad element in Telos. But the fact is that rewards are, it will not be maybe priced similar to EOS, let's say. So the rewards are lesser. So I think the success of Telos is very important to really define whether these experiments will be, can be measured in terms of comparatively with EOS. So what do you say about that? And how do you guys keep that going? Like, how do you make sure that there's enough visibility in the ecosystem about Telos? One thing which I think I really liked is, for example, that this lot of app developers were struggling to buy RAM for EOS mainnet after the RAM prices went up. I think this is one perfect example for Telos to say that, okay, here we have, like Worbli saying that your account creation is almost free because they don't plan to speculate on RAM. So are you seeing that kind of excitement in the app developers, or do you see any more people approaching you to develop on Telos or Worbli?
That's a good question. Yeah, in general, I know one thing Telos is doing is seeking to provide the first 1 million accounts for free. So, earmarking resources up front to say people who come, can get a free account. So trying to reduce a little friction there. In general, Telos has some interesting bits in the Constitution, or in Telos, it's known as the Telos Network Operators Agreement. And that actually okays proprietary DApps. So in the EOS mainnet, we have a clause that says all DApps should be entirely open source. This is one of the arguments for why, an app like EOSbet may not actually be covered under ECAF. They just had their recent hack. ECAF wasn't fast enough to respond for EOSbet, so regardless, it didn't matter. But the thought was, hey, you guys said you're closed source, and that's against the Constitution, so you shouldn't be covered if you're hacked. But in Telos, it's okay. So dApps that want to keep some aspect of their stack, closed source, are free to launch on Telos and free to still benefit from arbitration. Now, we know someone could deassemble the WebAssembly files and try to sniff at the code. And then in general, the best practice is to open source code, because then we can build confidence in what it's actually intended to do and audit it. So I'm not really advocating for not open sourcing, and you'll see all our code will be open source. But in general, like, this creates a new consideration for dApps, because maybe if they do want to keep part of their stack closed source, they can go to Telos, they can still be protected by arbitration. Whereas with our current mainnet constitution, it's been discussed, maybe they wouldn't have actually been covered. As far as Worbli apps go, we're a little recent to Worbli, so we're still learning more about it. We really joined up about 2 weeks ago. I think we were their last initial block producer to join. Or one of the last at least. So, I'm really interested in learning more about Worbli. I've been, I want to understand that ecosystem better. I don't know. I know that Worbli is building apps themselves internally. I'm not sure to what extent there has been outreach for third-party dApps for Worbli, but I gotta assume that there probably are some leads and some companies already looking at it. I just am not aware of them yet. All so, right. Yeah, that's an interesting aspect for Telos and Worbli. Telos has a lot of interesting things going on with it. I know there's been discussion about attempting to stabilize the RAM price using the Telos Foundation, which is actually a DAC that will it'll function as a funding body that has 6 million Telos that it can use to pay for proposals. And it could also, part of the intention was to have a float of Telos available to attempt to stabilize the RAM market. So that's more like Federal Reserve-esque, right? Because you've got some knob twiddler trying to stabilize it. I personally am not a fan of solutions like that. But, when you're a part of something bigger, you kind of, once in a while, you have to make compromises. So like Telos can't just be the chain we want. It's the chain that a group of people want. And, we can advocate for certain aspects of it, but at the end of the day, it's a collective work. So there's always compromise.
Sure. So I think that's a great example you gave, where you, this is the part of the community building. You're trying to build a new community with Telos. So let me ask a few quick questions. So let's try to, because people don't understand Telos that well. So let's ask a few things. For example, let's say if I'm writing an app, can I, if I'm developing an app for mainnet, can I still run it on Telos if I want to? Does it give that? Okay.
Yeah, I don't think there's any reason why you couldn't. In fact, I've been talking to EOSbet directly, like saying, hey, it'd be kind of cool. Like, keep your bet token on mainnet, create like a side chain with Telos, like some sort of two-way peg with Telos, allow people to gamble their Telos on EOSbet and pay out those dividends to the bet holders on mainnet.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Why not? I mean, I'm trying to put bugs in people's ear when I think of wacky stuff like that. But yeah, in general, I mean, I think you can. It's the concept is to change as little as we need. So there's some changes to voting and some changes to also how block producer pay works. So on Telos, all of the actives earn the same rate and all of the standbys earn the same rate. There isn't a vote-weighted increase that we see with the mainnet. And also the standbys get rotated in periodically to test them. So there are some changes, and that's more like Steam. Steam already has that wildcard 21st slot. So, but the idea is we definitely don't want to diverge so far away from mainnet that we can't pull in changes that Block One are making, because they've got a lot of, as the creators, we definitely want to leave that option open to continue to bring in all of the great stuff they're building. So it's a kind of a balancing act. Like we're tweaking it and making some changes where we can, but we don't want to totally rewrite, because then it becomes harder to merge changes. So, that adds another dimension of complexity.
Sure. So let me ask some other questions which people have in their minds about Telos. So when is the mainnet? So when can we expect to see Telos to be ready and operational? And when do we will get airdrops?
Good question. So the first Telos no-go vote is on September 28th.
All right.
And there's actually, on the Telos Foundation website, there's a launch checklist. So up front, we've decided, rather than having a bunch of no-go, no-calls where people debate whether or not it's time to launch, let's just draft a set of criteria. If all the criteria are met, we launch. So the first call to actually discuss that will be September 28th. So it could launch then. And as far as how to go about getting your airdrop, so because Telos is using the same snapshot as the EOS ERC20 Genesis snapshot from June 2nd, you will use those same keys. Now, what we have been recommending to everyone is, as a matter of principle and just good security practice, you want to make sure that your mainnet account with your EOS has different keys when you go to import these keys elsewhere to claim airdrops. Because Telos isn't going to be the only chain that does this. I'm pretty sure Evolution is another one that's looking to use the Genesis snapshot. It's lesser talked about. They've been kind of quiet. I don't really know what the status is of theirs, but as we see chains attempting to use the EOS Genesis, we want to make sure that people don't get compromised in case there's a malicious chain. So definitely change your EOS mainnet keys before you import to get your Telos or any other sister chain that's using the Genesis, just in case. I totally believe in Telos and the integrity of it, and the code is also open source, which is definitely a prerequisite for a blockchain. But beyond that, I mean, we just got to be careful and teach people good habits. So
sure, I think it makes sense. This is exactly what I was talking about at one point. But you need to understand that there are very few people who have actually even accessed their tokens. There are a lot of accounts, Genesis accounts, which have not even touched their tokens. Because crypto in general historically has been a cold storage kind of operation where people buy and they just store it for long term. That's how I think Bitcoin is operating for a very long time. You see a lot of tokens which have never been touched. So I think there is going to be a challenge personally, and definitely people don't even have a understanding. Like Evolution you talked about, in my book, it was kind of a dead project for some time. While I don't know the teams, I should not comment about it. But what I would say is they have not been that visible. They have not been communicating that well. While Telos is, I think, have a lot of credible block producers. So how do you break this barrier of people saying that they are not comfortable changing their keys? Because now you're talking about changing owner keys, which is going to be a tricky part for a lot of people. So I would say Telos has a responsibility to educate people Or do you think
Yeah,
it's a better way to
indeed.
work with another better way I would say is to work with existing wallets which have a good reputation, where
Mhm.
you can get some permissions from using those keys, and let users create new keys. That's what I think would be even better idea, where you get authentication. And I heard that Worbli is trying to do that. So what Worbli is trying to do is they will take some kind of authentication from either Scatter or some other way. And then they will allow you to create new keys for your account. So they will let you create accounts. They will let you create hopefully new keys. I don't know whether they are going that way, but it's
Mhm.
more about authenticating with Genesis keys rather than using the keys to be imported. So
I
what do you say
see.
about that?
I think it's a great idea. And I do agree that we do have a responsibility as a project that is launching, and requesting people to import their Genesis keys to claim, to due diligence and make a best effort to provide educational materials in static places, and to really get loud about that. And at the very least, like, we need we need a good UI for rotating keys.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if EOS Toolkit or my EOS Toolkit or any of those wallets have created GUIs around that, but I do know it is a bit of a bear on the CLI. So obviously, for most people, they just want to go to a web page and maybe use Scatter and get in and do it in like a hardened form UI that's already been used 1,000 times to do this, and just really have that assurance. And I think that's really important. And this little conversation about it actually, I'm going to bring it up because we do need to address that this month. So
Yes, that would be great, because I would say that like if you look at even the air grabs or whatever is happening, even on Scatter, the usage is less than 10%. So less than 10% of users are really coming and going and doing air grabs. So
Mhm.
I would really highly recommend that as the process becomes more and more complicated, and especially if it is about using your Genesis keys, the adoption will be smaller and smaller. So that would be my recommendation. So I think let's step our gears, like let's go on to the next level, and let's talk about EOS education. I think you guys have been pretty much up ahead of the curve, educating people. And I heard about some others, like you actually started interfacing with developers, doing workshops and so on. So how do you see this excitement around EOS? Do you see a lot of people coming in and joining and signing up for these workshops? Do you see like what is the uptick of in terms of developers coming on board?
Great question. So actually, just to clarify, we're working on our first workshop for developers.
All right.
Most of our content has been aimed at just piquing people's interest and starting to do some light explanation of the conceptual bits. It depends though. So for people who totally aren't exposed to blockchains, which we do have quite a number of them following us now, quite a number of their ears, we have to really start at fundamentals and work and build them up and get them excited about it. People who are already in blockchain, we can draw analogies and explain why they may want to take a look at EOS, get involved, point to the apps that already exist and like how quick they came out, the fact that they work. But yeah, we're working towards our first developer workshop in partnership with Grand Circus Co., which is a coding boot camp.
Oh, nice.
So they have been in business for a while now, as long as I've been in Detroit. I gotta say, they've been around for almost 10 years, and they've been teaching people how to do Java, how to do front end, back end. They have mobile, like they have all these different classes to help people pivot their careers. So it's more of a adult education, come into our boot camp, learn how to do this stuff. And we have good connections there. We actually base our co-working place out of there. So we do have some space for our team. And, we're working to create just a one-day EOS workshop to start, just to are you a web developer? Well, come join us, you know. So we want to target people who already have some development knowledge and kind of help them cross the chasm into EOS and understand like blockchain doesn't have to be scary, and draw the analogies. So as a result, I went and built a simple web app for Telos to manage our Telos founders bounty tokens. So rather than just allocating the tokens arbitrarily, I got everyone in the Telos contributors group to buy into using the slicing pie model, which we're using locally or within EOS Detroit. And I built an app to manage that so people can put in time contributions, cash contributions, and this model will simply spit out the breakdown. And so everyone can come self-report. Work group chairs actually approve the contribution, so we do have a light arbitration kind of built in. That's more, it's really based on an honor system, but we can kind of, it's all transparent so we can check each other. And the idea here is I wanted to build an app that I could convert into a decentralized application, document that whole process, and generate the curriculum for our workshop. So that's in progress right now. And you know, we're excited. I think that we'll be able to have the workshop in Q4. So that's really our goal, is to actually get this thing on the calendar. It kind of depends a little bit on Grand Circus and their scheduling. So it might be Q1 2019, but you know, we're looking to do this as a pilot and build up from there. So we'll do our first workshop, and then we'll you know, based on feedback, we can convert it into a series and actually create, you know, a set of tools. And ideally, what we'd like to do is take that curriculum and share it with the community too. So now we don't have to be the only ones that can host this workshop. We can spread it around. So that's, you know, just something, I think it's really important to give back our skills. You know, really fortunate to be a developer, to be so close to the bleeding edge of technology, and, you know, taking a little time to give back, and especially with EOS, which is so new and so misunderstood, trying to help iron out some understanding there is important. So, you know, we anticipate it'll be valuable for the community, and so we do it. And
I think
it's up to the voters to choose.
Yeah, no, it's a great initiative, and it is actually very close to my heart in terms of enabling developers. I keep talking about it in our show. In fact, we are hosting a conference on November 12th in San Francisco, trying to bring in people, and definitely we would like to add more workshops. So I hope like you can consider this as my invitation. I hope you guys can join us and help us build more awareness with developers.
Yes, definitely. I think we'll make it to SF for the hackathon. So if we do make it, then we'll definitely be at your event, because why not? Of course, it's a great, you're putting your heart into it. So, you know, we got to meet you where you're at, and all of us together just need to keep it up, because it's just amazing to see the energy that teams are putting into EOS, and community members too, like yourself, like just people who are like, I have tokens, I've got skin in the game, I'm going to go do something about it and make this better. And it's really amazing. You know, we're part of a grand experiment that's never been done before.
Yeah. No, I think we are all glad to do this, because I think all of us believe in EOS. We believe in the kind of power of how this can really change. Because blockchain is one concept, but getting it to the masses, getting it to the scalability which EOS can provide, I think that's what keeps us all excited. So I think, Rob, it's great talking to you. Before we go, any last comments for the viewers, and from EOS Detroit, what can we expect, and what you would like to say in the end?
Yeah, so for any of the viewers going to London, we'd love to connect with you. We're sending a contingent out for the EOS Hackathon this weekend upcoming, and we'll also be attending some of the block producer meetups and blockchain live. So we'll be in London for a week. So please do reach out. Beyond that, we're just going to keep working our tails off to build value for EOS. So, we do have the EOS community calendar initiative we mentioned. We really want to ramp that up. We want to make it so that community members can submit events to it as well. So we can just curate as a community, like make sure all the events get put into the same place and aggregated. And yeah, beyond that, I'd say keep an eye out for, this workshop we talked about. Keep an eye out for our live streamed meetups. So we live stream meetups, EOS Alliance calls, block producer calls, any working group in EOS. If you're part of a working group in EOS, please come ask us to help, because we would love to get the word out about what you're working on. And, we're always down to join in, and if not participate, at least help with the live streaming and recording and being a scribe. So, we're going to keep on keeping on, and we appreciate everyone who supports us.
No,
and thanks a lot, Ramon, for the invite. It's great.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. I think it has been great work you have been doing, and we really appreciate all the hard work your team has put in. And especially, I think a lot of people have given up. A lot of block producers who didn't make it in the paid members, paid block producers, they have given up. And you guys are keep going and finding ways to keep this activity either through sister chains. And we wish you all the best. And we are proud to be voting for you as Investing with a Difference. We need more hardworking block producers like you. So everyone, I think, please vote for them if you want to support block producers who are not in the top. While we don't have that strategy, we do pick few block producers from the list which are down there. But I would say that I have been interacting with Rob for some time now and looking at their work. I think they are one of the most hardworking block producers working for the community. And we would look forward to more great things from you.
Thank you, Ramon. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Oh, yes.
That's how we view it,
Yeah, and let's keep going, and I hope to see you in San Francisco. And by the way, guys, I keep reminding you as a proxy, and none of these videos are sponsored. These are spontaneous videos, and this is coming from my heart. Being a community member for EOS Detroit, I think this is something which is basically the kind of work we have seen. And if you are following EOS, I think we need to support these block producers. So I got a lot of messages when Telos was launched that why we are voting for members from Telos. Let me remind you that we need to really understand what's going on and how this is going to boost the ecosystem. And let's be open-minded. I think still a lot of people are confused about all these forks. And this is what we try to keep bringing. And this was a great talk with Rob today. Thank you, Rob, and all the best. And we'll keep seeing you in various events from EOS. Bye for now.
Thank you, Ramon. See you now.